L.A., boy. Dodger Town with the passing of Hall of Famer and ambassador of the sport, Tommy Lasorda, ambassador of baseball. Dodger Blue. Meantime, more big market baseball. Are the Mets stealing the Yankees' shine? Steinbrenner talking they need to get under the luxury cap threshold, and LeMahieu's still waiting for a deal, and meantime Lindor is headed to the Mets. By the way, and the Mets pick up a good pitcher in the deal too, like a number 3 starter who is like not just, hey, he's a mid-rotation guy. Carrasco, if is a nice mid-rotation guy. Means you have a hell of a rotation if he's a mid-rotation guy. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Are the Mets going to challenge the Yankees for New York supremacy this season? Max Kellerman Show presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests join me on the Goodyear hotline. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Tommy Lasorda passes away at the age of 93. And look, on a day like this, normally you lead with NFL wildcard, so there's a lot of stuff to get into, including what's on the line for Tom Brady, for Baker Mayfield, for Ben Roethlisberger, for Lamar Jackson. But very sad news that Lasorda passed at the age of 93. He was, I had Tommy Lasorda on the radio in the past, and in fact, he was such a big personality, and he was getting a little older, but still had that fire, man. When I compared Clayton Kershaw to Sandy Koufax, he jumped all over me, and he was wrong in the regular season at least. Kershaw's kind of value in the modern game was comparable to Koufax's. Like, guys don't throw 300 innings anymore. But like Koufax, every single year, Kershaw was leading the league in whip and ERA and strikeouts to innings pitched, just like Koufax. But, of course, the big difference was Koufax was one of the all-time great postseason players. An ERA under 1 in the World Series in like 47 or 50-something innings. And Kershaw has not been that, although he's a World Series winner now. Anyway, boy, did Lasorda get on me for that. Yeah, you can't even bring up Kershaw's a good kid, but you can't even bring up his name with Koufax. He still had that fire. He was a big personality as a Yankees fan growing up. You know, I was used to watch as a little kid. I was used to seeing Lasorda in the opposite dugout. Yankees played him in the World Series, and when I was a little kid, 77, 78, again in 81. So, like, Tommy Lasorda, and baseball has lost its place in the kind of, in popular culture, in the popular imagination. You know, it used to be really the number one sport, and obviously it's not anymore. But back then, the most popular or among the most popular characters from baseball was a national celebrity in a way that baseball players and managers are not today. One of 5 managers, Tommy Lasorda, to win multiple World Series and Manager of the Year awards. But look, so L.A., you want to talk about Tommy Lasorda today? You want to call in reminiscing? Let's do it. New York, you want to talk about whose town it's going to be, Yankees or Mets? Mets making moves and spending money. Cohen, the new owner, showing you he'll spend money. Steinbrenner kind of pulling back. Let's do it. 888-SAY-ESPN. But first, it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. We made it through 17 weeks of regular season. I can't believe it. I thought it was an impossibility. I also thought if, 300,000 Americans were going to die of a disease, eventually people might stop playing sports, but that's not the world we were living in recently. But look, so as a human being, I'm like, oh, maybe this wasn't a great idea. As a sports fan, though. Because being a human being and being a sports fan sometimes are at odds with each other. Sometimes it's hard to be a sports fan and a good person at the same time. But we made it through the NFL season. By the way, it was a pretty good season. Especially, all things considered, it was a really good season. And this wild card weekend, let me ask you something. When was the last time you had this many interesting matchups? Tampa at Washington. Tampa won 11 games. Washington won 9. Tampa's on the road. And it's not just Tampa. These are not your slightly older siblings, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. These are the Tom Brady Tampa Bay Bucks. With AB. Not just Godwin and Evans and everything. With AB also. And a defense. And they're on fire right now. And they're playing a sub-500 team. Could you imagine? By the way, lucky to be in the playoffs. If Doug Peterson opts to kick the field goal and doesn't take Jalen Hurts out, probably playing the Giants right now, which is a matchup I would have preferred. Would have been reminiscent of Super Bowl, the 2007 Super Bowl, when the Giants played him tough last week of the season, Brady and the Patriots, and then came back to beat him in the Super Bowl as underdogs. Imagine Brady seeing that Giants defense coming, oh God, having flashbacks. But the Washington football team, by the way, especially against the backdrop of what is going on, what just happened in D.C., is a pretty dramatic setting at the very least for a Tom Brady-led team. By the way, who, if like, what's on the line? Tom Brady gets upset by a sub-500 team in the playoffs. No good. No good, because we're the number one sports debate in the 21st century. The Patriots dynasty started right at the turn of the century and it ended last year. The number one sports debate in the 21st century in American sports is it more Brady or Belichick? Don't let Brady get upset by a 7-9 team week one of the playoffs. I would say Brady's got to at least win this game for the season to be like, okay, it wasn't a failure. And if you want to call it an unqualified success, I think he's got to get to the NFC Championship game. And is that even the most interesting game on the docket? Can the Browns pull off the upset against the Steelers? That was Straight Talk Wireless, by the way. No contract, no contract.
Browns at Steelers.
Now I can talk about that game. Every word I say is sponsored. You ever see the show, the movie Idiocracy? It's what plants crave. Why do you... No, Brondo, it has electrolytes. Why do you keep saying that? Because I get paid every time I do. Can the Browns pull off the upset versus the Steelers? The Browns' facility's been closed since December 30th. And they're not going to have Stefanski. And meanwhile, Baker Mayfield has not thrown a pass since Sunday due to virtual practices as a result of the COVID outbreak with the Browns. Baker, a lot of people are asking, what are you going to do without your head coach, Kevin Stefanski? What are you going to do without Coach Baker?
That line of communication's always been open between the three of us, but obviously there's going to be, a few little different nuances with AVP calling it. But I mean, Kevin and him are still talking. We're all still having those conversations throughout the week, just like a normal game plan week would go.
I got to say, if you listen to the way Baker Mayfield's dealt with the media this year, you could hear maturity. At one point when people in the national media, and it was Stephen A. going at him at the time, and he was asked about it point blank, he was like, that's their job to talk. My job is to do X, Y, and Z and stay in this. But he gave a mature response. And the thing about Baker is, remember, when Alex Smith was the first overall pick like Baker, right? It looked like he was maybe a bust because he had new OC every year. Baker Mayfield had 3 different head coaches before he got Stefanski. So in 2 seasons and 1 game, he had 4 different head coaches. It's nuts. And who were those head coaches? Hugh Jackson, the worst coach in the league. Greg Williams, a coach so bad that he made a play call so bad on defense, he probably never works in organized football again after this year. And who was it last year? Freddie Kitchens. And Kitchens was a disaster. A rookie head coach. Right? So those were his guys. Not exactly a who's who. As soon as he got a good coach, Stefanski, who was an excellent coordinator, offensive coordinator with Minnesota, he's balling. The team is balling. But can they do it without him? I'm more concerned about the fact they haven't practiced than Stefanski won't be there calling the plays, actually. Because while it is true that play calling is a big part of what a coach does, preparation is too. And not just that week's preparation. The culture set since the preseason. The way they've gone about their business all year. That team is a team. It's a team. They have an identity. They found it through the year. Run the ball, stop the run. Baker, make enough plays in the moment of truth to take us there. I think they can stay. It's funny because Juju Smith-Schuster said they have a couple good players on their team. This is a quote, but at the end of the day, I don't know. The Browns is the Browns. And that's true. Browns is the Browns. By the way, there was a good slugger, but like a platoon hitter in the 70s named Oscar Gamble. Yankees fans will know what I'm talking about. And he has the best quote of all time. Asked about Steinbrenner, George Steinbrenner, Oscar Gamble said, people don't think it be like it is, but it do. It's pretty good. It has a logic. What he's saying is, people don't think it be like it is, but it do be like it is. People don't think it be like it is, but it do. And here's the thing. I don't know if it do with the Browns anymore. He's saying it's the same old Browns, Juju Smith-Schuster. It ain't the same old Steelers. That's the problem. Might be the same old Browns. It ain't the same old Steelers. Steelers can't run the ball. Roethlisberger can't throw the ball down the field. Remember the Steelers? They had dudes in the secondary like Troy Polamalu, and I told it to his face, at least on a split screen. Ryan Clark. They had dudes who made you pay a price. Even if it was a completion, you paid a price. Little by little, you started to lose the will to go over the middle, stuff like that, to go across the middle. This is not those Steelers. They have a really good defense, but they don't have dudes in the secondary like Polamalu.
The Browns is the Browns.
Browns is the Browns.
The Browns is the Browns.
Steelers, yes, Steelers is not the Steelers. That's the problem. And by the way, I don't know if the Browns is still the Browns. The Browns may not still. They won 11 freaking games this year. And by the way, here's the other thing that's crazy. You know how Mason Rudolph brought them back into the game, which they lost last week? This is a rematch of a game not even a week old that the Browns won. These two teams just played, and the Browns won. But the fact that it was even close, it's because Mason Rudolph was throwing the ball down the field. It's not what Ben Roethlisberger does anymore. It's not what he does anymore. And Browns didn't have Denzel Ward. Guess who they're going to have this week? Denzel Ward. Meantime, I think the Browns have a shot at that upset. Can Lamar Jackson get revenge and beat the Titans this time around? And more importantly, can he finally win a playoff game? He's 0-2 in the playoffs. Lamar Jackson, at one point, there was a stat. Against all other teams, other than the teams I'm about to tell you, he was 21-1 in 22 starts in his NFL career. 21-1. That's insane. But he was 0-6 in the following games. 21-1 means you're beating some good teams. He beat Seattle. He beat some good teams. It wasn't just a team and he beat some good defenses. It wasn't just, well, teams figured out. Don't let him run the ball. Yeah, Sherlock, you figured that out, huh? Didn't matter what they tried. They couldn't win. 21-1. Except 0-1 against Roethlisberger's Steelers. That's the game you have to win if you're the Ravens quarterback. 0-3 against Mahomes and the Chiefs. That's the game you have to win if you want to get out of the AFC. And 0-2 in the playoffs. Obviously, you ain't winning the Super Bowl unless you win a playoff game. But here's the thing about Lamar. I bring this up whenever the subject comes up. Completely lost in the first half of his playoff life. Completely lost. Maybe the worst quarterback I ever saw in the playoffs in the first half. Second half, already he was a different player. He adapts fast. Already a different player in the second half of that game, but of course they still lost. He still wasn't any good in the second half, but he was much, much better than the first half. Game 2 of his playoff career, much better. He was not the reason they lost. Now, he wasn't perfect, but his play was good enough. He wasn't as good as he normally is. He was still something less than the normal Lamar Jackson, but it was a vast improvement over even the second half of his first playoff game, which was an improvement over the first half. So he's trending in the right direction. Can he beat the Titans? I'll bring this up. The Titans this season beat Lamar Jackson and the Ravens in overtime. Now consider this. How does Lamar win this game? He doesn't have an outside threat, really. He doesn't have he's a spectacular offensive weapon short, right? But what can he do? Can the Ravens play defense? Oh, yes, they can. Can they run the ball? Yes, they can. What can Lamar Jackson do? Lamar Jackson can pull a Tom Brady here. Remember Tom Brady early in his career with the Patriots? What was his real job? Don't screw this up and make just enough plays under pressure. The defense is going to do its job. Make just enough plays under pressure that you get us in field goal range and have a great field goal kicker come in and save and win the day. Well, who does Lamar Jackson have? Justin Turner. Sorry. What did I just say? Yeah, Justin Turner. The best field goal kicker in the NFL. All Lamar has to do is let that defense and the run game keep this game close and put your kicker in line to win. Did I say Justin Turner? I meant Justin Tucker. I don't mean the third baseman for the Dodgers. I mean the field goal kicker for the Ravens. But give me a break. I don't want to. Oh, you said Justin. You know, how many people on TV and the radio say Russell Wilson when they mean Russell Westbrook and vice versa? Justin Tucker. You just got to get him within, 60 yards, 55 yards. You have a good chance to win. That's what Lamar has to do. Defense in the run game has to keep the game close, and Lamar's got to make enough plays under pressure, which we saw him do against Baker and the Browns, by the way. Remember that game? Comes hobbling out of the locker room on 4th down, completes a pass for a touchdown, and then after Baker drives him down the field, Lamar drove him right back down the field, and they kicked the field goal to win. Yeah, I think the Ravens have a real good shot to beat the Titans, and I'll go farther than that. I say the Browns are going to beat the Steelers in the upset, and Lamar wins his first playoff game against Tennessee. How do you like that? You like apples? Meantime, Damian Woody, ESPN NFL analyst on Keyshawn, Jay, Will, and Zubin this morning, seems to agree with me.
Get all this noise from people about, this lack of passing, passing outside the numbers and down the field. Do what you do. You are the most exciting weapon at the quarterback position in this league. Do what you do. And I wouldn't want to see Baltimore come this postseason. I can tell you that.
I agree. I don't think teams want to see Baltimore. You want to see an excellent defensive team with a quarterback who's hard to account for and a field goal kicker who has practically infinite range? Mike on Long Island, you're on the Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio.
Hi, yeah. Thanks for having me, Max. I'm a big fan. I was just calling to allude to when you were asking before if you ever think the Mets will overtake the Yankees and become the more popular team. I wanted to just bring to your attention to try to compare that to the Lakers and the Clippers relationship. In my opinion, there is nothing the Mets can ever do to overtake the Yankees. I feel like this will always be a Yankee town as it is in L.A. with basketball.
Listen, I'm a Yankees fan to the bone, to the core. I'm a Yankees fan. And I know a lot about that team's history, and, I was there for a lot of those great games. I grew up in the bleachers in Yankee Stadium, basically. I could tell you this. In 1986, New York was a Mets town. You can't say temporarily that little brother can't flip the town. I saw it happen. Mets drew more fans. There was more interest. Now, geographically, the Yankees have an advantage because the Mets start in Queens and the kind of fan base goes out to Long Island, but it's a dead end. It's an island. Whereas the Yankees go up, have not only a big chunk of Manhattan, but they go up into the Bronx and Westchester and Jersey, and they just have more people to root for them. And they're the heritage team who are normally better. But you can't tell me that the Mets haven't flipped the town temporarily in the past. They did it in '86. I'm not asking if it's going to be permanent. It won't be. I'm saying this upcoming season, Steinbrenner doesn't want to spend money. They still haven't given LeMahieu a deal. And Cohen just traded for Lindor. Richard in Manhattan, you're on the Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio.
Max, in 1964, Mets' first year at Shea Stadium, and the Yankees were the Mets were at Shea Stadium, the Yankees were at Yankee Stadium. They won the pennant, went to the World Series, the Yankees. The Mets outdrew the Yankees. So just remember that.
Well, listen, also, that was the Mets had inherited at that time 2/3 of the baseball fans in the town because after 57, there's no Giants, no Dodgers. The Mets take the blue from the Dodgers and the orange from the Giants and the pinstripe from the Yankees, and they inherited 2/3 of a city's fans that were like looking to attach themselves to a non-Yankees team.
National League.
So as soon as the Mets,
New York City has always been a National League city. Max, as far as Tommy Lasorda, we will never, ever see anything like him again. I think he was a coach and a manager for 40 years total. 40. This guy was a loyal lieutenant to Walter Alston.
And he was a player.
All those years, third base coach, never said never went to go to another interview, said, I'm going to wait till Mr. Alston retires. He always addressed Walt Alston as Mr. Alston. And he waited till Alston retired, and Alston used to sign one-year contracts every year. And Lasorda came right in without without missing a beat. The Dodgers maintained their excellence. This guy was not only an ambassador to the game, but such a loyal soldier to the Los Angeles Dodgers and formerly the Brooklyn Dodgers. This guy, we will never see anyone like him in any of the four major sports, Matt.
Well, I don't know if we will or we won't, but I'll say that he was on those Brooklyn teams, as you know, briefly, had a couple coffees with them. He was on those Brooklyn teams in the mid-'50s, and as a pitcher, not a very good one. But like when people talk about bleeding Dodger blue, that dude was really about it. Lasorda loved the Dodgers. It was his life. He did not want to be associated with anyone else. He wanted to be a Dodger. And franchises every now and then get a guy like that. And especially when it's a heritage franchise, because he played for them in Brooklyn and obviously coached and managed them in L.A. Went across the country with them, but always loved them the same, like was really only interested in being a Dodger. You're right. I don't know that you could say you'll never see anything like that, but there are few examples of it, and those characters are especially beloved by the fan base. Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Cars, homes, boats, motorcycles, RVs, and more at Progressive.com. Bills Mafia. You've been waiting for this moment. Josh Allen ready to deliver you to the promised land. For do-it-yourself projects, you know the Home Depot's always in your corner. Now with their mobile app, it can also be in the palm of your hand with digital tools like image search. Just snap a picture of something, it'll recognize it and serve up product suggestions in seconds, and their product locator will check availability.